Before we do our welcomes, I would love to know if there's anyone here who has never been in this building before. Okay, so if at lunch you want to come back over here, lunch is going to be from 12:30 to 1:30. If you want to come back over at 1:15, I will do an architectural piece that others who have done a lot of the Germanna tours have heard. But I want to just point out two things before we start today, and this is because we've never done this kind of an event in this space. But because this was built to be not just a religious worship space, but a community space and a community building space in the institutional church, and lots of things would have happened here, non-religious things, we want to learn how to use it in the 21st century for that. So thank you guys for being part of the pilot. We're frantically taking notes, and now we can say we need to apply for a grant that lets us put projectors on both sides and some of that type of stuff. So know that that's what we're planning. Probably related to that, the first thank you I should make is to my husband, Joel Duncan. He's going beyond the call as a clergy spouse today to have taken a vacation day to make sure that he was on the sound. So if at any point you can't hear, please just raise, if it's not during the Q&A time, raise your hand and he'll nod to you and we'll try to figure that out. So you're still having trouble hearing there.
Very good.
Okay, so if you are someone who, and I say this as someone who has a profound hearing loss, if you are someone who struggles with hearing, you are best off in one of these two pews. And so if you need to move, great. Please do. The other piece about movement in this place is even when the speakers are speaking, if you need to leave to go to the restroom, you go out this door, and it is in the building across the hall, across the courtyard, not the hall, the courtyard, and you go inside and to the left, and that's where the restrooms are. If you need water or you need more coffee, the standard in Little Fork Episcopal Church is that you move when you need to care for yourself, and the person speaking will not be offended. It's the only way we can welcome children in this church. And so anything that applies as an intergenerational congregation to children also applies to adults. So please know that. There are two architectural pieces I want to point out. One, I would love to draw your attention to the organ. The organ was put in 2024. It is a new installation into this building, and it represents for us how we balance preservation and the current needs of a living congregation. So the organ is parts of two organs that churches were getting rid of that the organ builder combined for us. It's the third organ in the history of this church that we have taken as a hand-me-down. And this one actually got professionally rebuilt. And when we installed it, we had a cabinet maker match all of the woodwork that was in the church. And so it represents something the living congregation needed, but we did it in a way that represents and fits with the historic nature of the building. And that is what Little Fork is deeply committed to, is learning and using our past and our history as a resource for our present and our future. The other thing that I would point out to you is that this is a three-level pulpit, and announcements and things would have been done from this level. Anyone in the community almost could speak from this level. The middle level would have been where vestrymen spoke, people that had some authority and some knowledge and that the community recognized. And so that is where we'll do the lectures from. And the high pulpit would have only been used for the gospel and the sermon. So that is a little bit of the architectural pieces that we've used. Yes. I'm sorry, thank you so much. My colleague is helping me remember that I was supposed to introduce myself. I'm Stacy Williams Duncan, and I'm the rector here at Little Fork Episcopal Church. So, thank you. So, and probably I want to let Germanna make their welcome.
Thank you, Reverend Stacy, and thank you, everybody, for being here. Well, it's a beautiful, slightly smoky, but therefore more colorful morning for us here in Little Fork, so it's great to see everyone. I'm Lincoln Snyder. I am the board chair who married a Lutheran ancestor, and the Quakers fired her. What they did is they read into the meeting minutes that they were very disappointed in her, and she was out. And so as we consider the conversation we're having today about all of these different ways that our ancestors and those that came before us expressed their faiths, both individually and then together as an American community, I think it's going to be a very exciting conversation. Just big thanks to Jennifer Hurst-Wender, our executive director, to Keith Hoffman, our board chair, all the staff and volunteers at Historic Germanna, and finally to, I don't know, where did Pastor James go? Oh, there he is. The Zimmermans were parishioners of yours back in the day. I just, maybe we should see if they're still paying their tithes. So
Quakers make great Lutherans.
thanks, Pastor. So enjoy the luxury boxes, enjoy this wonderful church, and looking forward to the day. Thank you.
I was also going to start by thanking Pastor Jim for being my conversation partner in this, and most importantly, my closest colleague between Jim and Becky, who both serve in Madison. They are people that help have this conversation about small churches in this part of the world, and so I greatly appreciate that. Do you have a tip for us?
I usually get speakers beforehand, so you demonstrate this very well for both microphones. Because there's a wide swath to speak to in the room, if you'll move yourself around the microphone, if you want to look to this end, there you go. Notice.
You can't do this. I do this all the time on Sunday. You sort of really need to, okay. I can't do this. Thank you. So there are speaker bios for all four of our speakers in your handout for today, and we also will be handing out their slides, so you'll have those to take with you. One of the things that I want to note is that there is a cultural difference between the amount of information that a seminary puts on its website to use the bio for its president and what nonprofits and congregations put on their websites. So please do not read this as Hillary or Dan being less accomplished. They just serve in a different culture. And so these are the websites that are publicly shared by each speaker's organization on their website. Before I hand this over to Ian Markham, I want to say every speaker, we're just going to adjust time this morning. Every speaker will still take their 20 minutes. There are a couple of places where I've put buffers in that'll let us catch up later in the day. I have an exciting announcement to make, and Ian did not know that I was going to announce this. First, I also have an announcement from Kathy Ellis. I'm looking at my notes of my checklist. Before I introduce Ian, Kathy Ellis told me to tell you all that this chlor chair that is in the middle that we are using for our panel today came out of her house. Kathy said that we only have 2 nice wooden chairs to use in this space. And so that came instead of us using the plastic ones. And Kathy said I should let everybody that's attached to Germanna know that if you get to the place of downsizing and you want to make an in-kind donation, we are happy to provide you with a tax-exempt receipt for a donation eventually we would love to have 4 chlor chairs that we would use in this space. So Kathy told me that I should announce it. I was hesitant, but I promised her I would. Now, the announcement that Ian isn't aware where I'm going to make publicly today is that Ian has generously, as the president of Virginia Theological Seminary, made a sponsorship donation to support this event. And we did not end up needing to spend that to have the event. And so Jennifer and I have decided that we are going to use that money to research the story of the Germanna descendants who became part of this congregation. The lore and the story many of us tell, or many of you have told me, is that when they took land here, there was already such a strong English community here, and that through marriage and several things happened, they became part of this community. We know we have Germanna names in our vestry list, where what happened in Madison County was very different, where they established a community of their own. And so we are going to, over the next couple of years, use that to actually dig into the Germanna archives and probably the archives of the Episcopal Church and other places to really document that that's what's happened. And so please welcome Ian Markham, who is the Dean and President at Virginia Theological Seminary and the President at General Seminary, and let's also thank him for his research grant.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm just checking the mic's working. Mary had a little lamb, the doctor was surprised. That's always my mic test line. Mary had a little lamb, the doctor was surprised. Old MacDonald had a farm, the doctor nearly died. That's very profound. As you can probably detect, I don't come from around here. I'm an Englishman by birth, which is very appropriate when you think that I'm talking about the English. So no, this isn't a fake accent, it is actually how I speak all the time. I've been in America since 2001. My wife and I emigrated with our baby boy. I think it is working now. And we love America. We've had a great time here. I became an American citizen in 2010. Thank you very much. And I supported both the USA and England in the World Cup. I thought that was just a sort of good via media compromise. Okay, so you'll see either on your pack or on your slides, before religious freedom. Let me start by saying I'm very conscious there's a lot of expertise in this room, and do feel free to use the Q&A to say, well, actually, I can see you're a specialist in Christian ethics and theology, unlike my co-panelist who's the world expert on the Reformation. So do feel free to just say, actually, you're not quite right there, and I appreciate that feedback. Do you know, I will say a preliminary about the importance of understanding history. History is interesting, isn't it? It's our past. For many of you who are part of this remarkable historical association, you literally are learning about the journey that made you you. I mean, you know, it really is a sense of context that makes you the person you are. And that's important. History is also a matter of curiosity. I wonder what it was like then. But history is also vitally important because it explains the present. You know, we don't understand the present unless we understand the past. And if there are challenges in the present, we only really come to terms with those challenges as we learn about the past. Because it's only in understanding the past that we understand the present, and therefore it's only with that resource can we create new and different futures. So that is, and behold, the Holy Spirit descends. You were right all along. I thought it was fine. So, do you know, it reminds me of that joke. My bestseller is a book of jokes, incidentally. There's one joke for every gospel in the lectionary. So what do you get if you play country music backwards? And the answer is, you get your job back, you get your house back, you get your dog back, and you get your wife back. And of course, there's a whole literature on why is it the South are so fond of country music. And it's grounded in the history of the region. So it's grounded in the propensity of storytelling. So that's an important feature of Southern culture. And the reason why so much of country music tends to the tragic, the thesis often offered in the literature is the history of the Civil War. You know, the war was lost, and that colored a disposition. So understanding the past helps us understand the present, and then helps us come to terms with the present to create different futures. And that, I think, is the reason why today is so important. Okay, let's, I've got to cut here. So I represent establishment, and so from the first landing at Jamestown in 1607, and formally by Act of the House of Burgesses in 1619, the Church of England was the legal, established, tax-supported church of the colony. It was simply the religion of Virginia. What did we believe? Well, we were a Reformation church, but Protestant with a lot of Catholic sympathies. You might recollect that King Henry VIII was given the title Defender of the Faith because he defended the seven sacraments against that reformer, Martin Luther. So we have a mixture of our Catholic theology in our Book of Common Prayer, while the 39 articles are much more Protestant. So that is who we are. And here's one crucial social fact. Belonging was assumed, not chosen. You did not decide to be an Anglican in colonial Virginia any more than you decided to be a Virginian. You were baptized into it, taxed for it, married and buried by it. This is what an establishment is, a church you're born inside of. But one very strange thing about the Church of England in Virginia is we are a church defined by bishops. That's what the word Episcopal means, government by bishops. But Virginia was, for its entire colonial life, a church without one. Not a single bishop resided in the colony in over 150 years. So one very practical consequence is if you wanted to be a priest, you had to make the long and expensive and dangerous voyage to London and back. And many tried, and in the process died of smallpox or in a shipwreck. So it was very, very difficult to become a priest. Oversight, such as it was, belonged to the Bishop of London, thousands of miles away, exercised through a deputy called a commissary. The office had real teeth only under one formidable man, James Blair, who was a commissary for more than half a century from 1689. But it's interesting, in the 1760s and the 1770s, London floated the idea of finally sending a bishop across the ocean, and Virginians recoiled. They feared that they did not need a resident bishop as one more instrument of imperial control reaching over the water to bind them. So, what actually happened? You have rule by vestry. And in many ways, the culture of Virginia is still, ask the Bishop of Virginia, rule by vestry. So with no bishop to govern, power fell to the local laity, to the vestry. They are, in effect, the local government. 12 leading men, no women. They were hired and they hired and paid the minister. They maintained the church building. They managed the glebe, that would have been the farm and the parsonages that supported the clergy person. They relieved the poor and the orphans, and they levied the annual parish tax. And two features made this mechanism very powerful. First, the vestries were self-perpetuating. So when one of the 12 died, the survivor simply chose the replacement. And secondly, the tax. Now, the English were very strict about the money supply. So you didn't pay your tax in money. Instead, you paid it in tobacco. And it was the single largest tax a colonist paid. And everybody paid it, regardless of what they believed. Anglican, Presbyterian, Lutheran at Hebron, Baptists, or nothing at all. They were all taxed to support the church. And the minister, interestingly, was surprisingly weak. Many Virginia clergymen were never formally inducted into secure tenure. They were kept on year by year at the pleasure of the gentleman who paid them. So now you come to the church as a social order. It did not merely stand, it stood as the primary vehicle of social order. The historian Rhys Isaac taught a whole generation to read the colonial parish church as a kind of theatre of gentry authority. So picture a Sunday, the great planter families arriving, processing in, taking their appointed and often box-like pews at the front. And then you have the lesser folks behind, further out. And then you have those enslaved at the margins or in a gallery. The whole seating of the church was a map of Virginian society. And week by week, that map was quietly rehearsed, displayed, and blessed. And the save 12 men who sat as the vestry sat also as the county court and led the militia. So church, country, and class were all one fabric. To worship in the establishment was to take your assigned place in a hierarchy and to have that hierarchy sanctified. Okay. So here's an interesting little case study that you probably know. This is slide 6, which I've not numbered for you. Spotswood, the establishment in one man. So Alexander Spotswood is, I'm sure, well known to everybody here. He is a gentleman of the British Empire, born in Morocco in 1676. He arrived in 1710 as lieutenant governor and effectively ran Virginia for 12 years. He was a representative of the monarchy and a representative of establishment. And here you get the paradox of the past. On the one hand, this is the man who designed Bruton Parish Church in Williamsburg, the great church at the colony's capital, built between 1711 and 1715. And what's interesting about that church is its cruciform. So it's in the shape of a cross. It's the first in Virginia, and he supplied the bricks. He personally paid for the 22 of its 75 feet. And it was literally drawn and part funded by the governor. And that is the same man who in 1714 decided to focus on the iron industry. And to do that, you need people who can actually mine iron. So he goes to Germany, and you'll hear more about this from my fellow speakers. But that's where you get the Calvinist miners. And in doing so, he knew what he was doing. He was bringing dissenting Protestants to Virginia, where they would not have the right to worship as they please, where they would not have the right to have marriage or baptisms as they wished. So you get this paradox of a man on the one hand who builds Bruton Parish Church and on the other deliberately brings dissenters here. Many of you are probably pretty pleased he did, but nevertheless, you know, there is a sort of ambiguity here. And then, of course, after he built the Tubal furnace in 1717, and after the German indentures ran out, he ran the works with enslaved labor. Within about 20 years, of some 160 workers, only 2 were free. So in this one person, you see the whole establishment. You see Anglican faith, imperial power, the toleration of dissenters strictly for their usefulness, and human bondage, all braided into a single life and a single stretch of red clay just down the road. So we come to this building. I mean, here you are. And so as you know, the parish then was literally a geographical area. This is what's called a chapel of ease. And I'm sure you'll learn more about that at 1:15. Smaller churches where scattered settlers could worship closer to home. And this is this is the first time I've been here, and it is one of those amazing moments when you're aware that you're touching history, quite literally. And it's inhabited and seen so many changes over its 250 years. It is, on the one hand, a celebration of establishment. It's a brick outpost, confident, tax-funded, but of course, finishing in 1776. And so therein we have this image of establishment, authority, and power at the being finished at the very time that establishment was going to disintegrate. Now, I'm not going to say too much about slides 8 and slides 9 because my fellow panelists will talk more about this, but of course you have the dissenters arriving. Crucially, the Baptists were an enormous challenge to the establishment. Why? Because in the end, Virginian great men in the Anglican tradition prized display and hierarchy, horse racing and hard drinking, and Baptists built tight, disciplined, plain communities, men and women, white and black, at times worshipping together, who called one another brother and sister and deferred to no gentleman at all. So you can sort of sense that this was going to be a conflict, and a conflict it was. So you actually end up with 34 Baptist preachers being jailed in Virginia from 1768 to 1774. And a key person I'm sure you'll hear about was, of course, James Ireland, a remarkable man. So we come to the eve of the Revolution, and this is my concluding slide for this section. So on the eve of the Revolution, the Church of England and Virginia looked commanding. It was the law of the land, funded by a tax everyone paid, led by the gentry, and confident enough to raise buildings like this one on the very frontier. But underneath, it was stained in exactly the places that mattered. It had no bishop, and therefore no way to govern or reproduce itself without London. Its clergy were often insecure and dependent. Its laity were wary even of their own hierarchy. And it faced a rising tide of dissent, Presbyterian and above all Baptist. A dissent against the power of license, taxing, and using the jail to repress that dissent. So herein lies the paradox of the moment. The establishment that appears strongest was in truth most exposed and vulnerable. You've got a church tied tightly to the crown and to the social order, and when the crown and the social order are about to be overthrown, there's a real risk that the church will go down with them. That is movement 2, when we will think about the journey from establishment to episcopal. Thank you very much for listening. I've got to stay here for Q&A.
Are there questions that anyone would like to ask? I see a yes right away. I'm going to ask you to wait for me to get to you with the microphone because we are live streaming for some people who could not be here at the reunion in person, and so they are watching.
Spotswood as lieutenant governor. Who was governor?
That's a very good question. Does somebody else know the answer? Yes, please.
Yes, the historian.
We obviously don't talk about this much at home since he is my husband who asked the question. The governor was the Earl of Orkney,
That's right.
and he must have received the appointment from the crown. He got the bulk of the income from the position, and then Spotswood got his appointed portion of the monies for
That's right.
holding the office.
Thank you for that, and thank you for having such a lively marriage that there are things you clearly don't talk to each other about. But that's right, he's an absentee earl, so he's not here. So his lieutenant governor has the power and wields it very effectively. Thank you for helping me out. I did know that, actually.
Was Orkney Springs named after him, the governor?
I turn to my earl expert.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The answer is yes. Do you want to add anything to that? Do you mind just...
I don't mind at all. Oh, she said they debate that in Orkney Springs. So yes, maybe. Maybe no.
That's the thing about history, is it's actually hidden constantly under a shroud of mystery.
My question may be a bit premature in light of the panel that's going to address us later, but one thing I've always wondered and hoped that somebody, if not you, can answer for me. You just explained about how the church and the king and all that was involved in our beginnings of religious faith here in the U.S. How did the Anglican Church maintain its structure after the war? I mean, that's coming next. Okay. Like I said, I thought maybe I was premature, but I've always wanted to know how is it we still have Anglican churches in the U.S.?
That's a very good question, and that is movement 2
Movement
in
2.
the program.
Movement 2. Probably take 2 more questions before we transition. So I'll do right here. I'm going to go to the behind you, then I'll come right up front to you. Will you pass that to him, please?
You characterize the German churches, Lutheran Reformed, as dissenters, but yet Spotswood invites them, dissenters, to come. And in the case of Peter Muhlenberg, the vestryman, James Wood in Winchester, goes to Pennsylvania to ask Papa Muhlenberg if he has a Lutheran who could come and serve the valley. So how does that square with looking at them as dissenters?
Dino, the great thing about this is my distinguished colleague and good friend will give you much more detail on
Yes,
that. And I think I'll just leave it all to
Yes, that is the
Guy.
next 20 minutes. We're going to get that answer. This is fun. We planned a good day. They're asking what's coming.
Hi. I wanted to know, how did they determine the tax, tithe, whatever you wanted to call it, to the church? Was it based on property? Was it prorated? I mean, how did they do that?
Right. Now, so everything I shared with you, I learned basically for this talk. And you're asking the sort of questions I wish I'd asked myself. But my understanding was it was an assessment primarily of assets and property. But feel free to correct me, the Earl expert, or... so it was the tangible was the primary mechanism of assessment. And that's correct. Or you paid less.
Thank you very much. We are going to have a 5-minute break, and if you want coffee now, please do that. Or if you want coffee at the next break, put in an order so that it's waiting for you at the next break. Okay?
It's like the theatre.
And it is. It's like the theater. The theater in England, at least. So, thank you very much, and we'll transition slides, and we have about 5 minutes.